My name is Aaron Opdyke. I'm with Next Generation Power, here to talk about the Gen-Air-Ator. It's good for 45 kilowatts of power, 35 CFM of compressed air. We're going to talk today about the service points, connection points, and troubleshooting. First things first is we have fuel. Your fuel return line is connected up here. Your fuel supply would be connected to the electronic fuel pump down here. Next would be your oil filter, your fuel filter, and your air filter for the engine. Moving over to the compressor, we would have your oil filter, air oil separator filter, and the air filter for the compressor. Some of the service points that we need to do on a regular basis would be to check the cooler of your compressor to make sure that it is clean and clear of debris, as well as the same thing for the radiator core for the engine. You would also inspect any fuel lines for leaks before you start the engine. Your fuel filter and oil filters would be changed every 250 hours. The fuel filter would be changed as needed, as well as your air filter. On the compressor, the oil filter would be changed every 2,000 hours or once a year. The air oil separator filter would be changed every 2,000 hours or once a year, and your air filter would be changed as needed. Also needs to be checked on a daily basis. Simple things for changing filters. The oil filter and the fuel filter for the engine are just simple spin-on oil filter and fuel filter. The oil filter for the compressor, just remove this cover plate. The filter comes out. You put the new filter in, tighten your cover plate back down. The air oil separator filter, we will have to take that canister off to access the filters, and we'll talk about that later in the video. The air filter is just simply undo the nut on the back, remove the cover, replace the air filter, reinstall the cover plate and the nut. To replace the air filter, you just simply unclip the 3 clips on the canister, pull the cover plate off, and then you have a primary and a secondary air filter, one inside the other. You'll just replace both of these, slide them back in, and then reinstall the cover and snap down the 3 clips. The next thing we'll do is we'll go into removing and replacing the air oil separator filter. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the troubleshooting portion of the generator. If for some reason the generator is to shut down under operation, you'll have an error code light right here above your key switch. That'll flash a series of long and short lights. A copy of the error codes is provided with the unit, and that will tell you why the unit shut down. The only reason why it will not flash a code is if it shuts down due to a fuel-related problem. Most generally, the error code that flashes here is for oil temperature of the compressor, and that would be the cooler is not clean, the oil level is low, or it actually is overheating due to not a sufficient amount of airflow. If the oil level is low, then we may have a situation where you have oil carryover because of a clogged or damaged air oil separator filter. And we're going to take this off, and I'll show you how to replace those filters and how to service that. That'll be the next section. So first thing we need to do is you'll get an 8mm socket or ratchet, and you're going to loosen these small bolts. And we're going to back these out. Be careful not to lose the two washers. There's one on each side of this coupling. Back both of these out. And then you can the hose will just fall out of the way. Then you're going to take a 19 millimeter or 3/4 inch socket or ratchet and remove the oil return valves. So the next part is the clear tubing that comes around to the ARO valve. Is just a push connection. Just loosen that off by pushing in on the fitting and pulling out on the hose. And then you have an adjustable wrench to loosen off the air oil separator canister. And next we'll show you taking the separator canister apart and replacing the filters on the inside. Now we'll talk about replacing the air oil separator filter for reasons why you would replace this besides regular maintenance is if you get an excessive oil carryover that would come out of your air lines. This is why this is the part that you would service. So to replace this filter, you just get you a couple of screwdrivers or pry bars, slide them in the groove here, and work your way up. What you'll see is an O-ring. Be careful not to damage the casing. You pull this out. Both of these O-rings are in your air oil separator kit. All the O-rings, the oil return valves, everything is included in this kit. So once you get this out of the canister, then you just remove this nut on the back, pull the cap off, replace the filter, put your new filter in place, and then put your O-rings in place. Underneath this filter on both ends are O-rings as well. And once you put all of that back together, you're going to simply slide this back into the canister. Be sure that when you're putting the canister, putting it back in the canister, that your hole lines up for your mounting bolt to go through. Use of a rubber mallet. So once you get the holes lined up, then your mounting bolt will slide through the hole. And then you will be ready to reinstall this on top of the compressor. Important thing to remember is that the oil return valves are not in the hole when you put the filter back into the canister. If your return valve is in there, then you'll experience the two filters will make contact and you can break the oil return valve like this one shown here. Okay, when reinstalling the canister to the compressor, make sure that both surfaces are clean you replace the O-ring between the two, and you would just simply put this back down, start your canister nut, and align the pin into the hole. It's your adjustable wrench. And snug that up. Then you would reconnect your clear tubing by just simply pushing the tubing into the fitting. Reconnect any wires. And then reinstall your oil return valve. With the 19mm wrench or socket. And then reconnect the oil return hose, making sure that you have the small washers on each side of the fitting. And then screw into the oil return valve. And then tighten those down with an 8mm socket or wrench. And that concludes the proper way to service and repair the air oil separator filter on the Mate compressor.